Hey guys, hope all is well. This is episode 39 of the Rugby Recap. You have myself, Rugby Itch, as well as the Kiwi lads. First of all, man, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, mate. Six Nations back this weekend, of course, and a massive game around the corner for the Irish. Maybe some would say they're most challenging, but then at the same time, could also be very one-sided like the rest of their Six Nations campaign. But Super Rugby, of course, also really in the swing of things now. The Fijian Drua taking on the Crusaders in Fiji. I think that has potential of having fireworks.
Yeah, that's gonna be an awesome game. We'll get more into that obviously when we cover Super Rugby. But starting off, we'll start off with the Six Nations and all that. Actually, before we do so, make sure guys to like the video, subscribe towards the channel, and definitely just leave a comment below. Let us know what your thoughts are on this week in terms of the games for Six Nations as well as Super Rugby. But with the Six Nations, of course, we do have the free games. Starting off with Italy versus Scotland. This is gonna be an interesting one because normally you would class these two sides as like kind of like a it's like it in the lower scale of things in terms of like the table and like kind of position going back in the previous years. But hey, Scotland have been very impressive this year, very impressive, and yeah, they're actually making a kind of a charge. Maybe I'm gonna say maybe because you have to be very clear on that for Six Nations title because it's very like it's like a 10% chance you could say of them winning it because it has to kind of go in their way in terms of the England game. England have to essentially just beat Ireland to for Scotland to even have a chance of winning because it then obviously would come down towards the final week, which these where Ireland and Scotland would play against each other. But yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts for this one in terms of Italy Scotland? Do you think it'll be a competitive match, or do you think maybe one team will run away with it?
Well, you mentioned about how England do need to beat the Irish. And of course, we've learned for Scotland and the Six Nations, they need to find a way of beating the TMO because if they had
Yes.
won that game up against France, this Six Nations would have had a lot more juice still left in the tank.
Yeah.
And that last game between Ireland and Scotland could have been the big decider. But yeah, England need to win this game by 8 or more in terms of that Irish fixture just to give Scotland a bit of a chance. But then they can't underestimate Italy because, of course, last week or the week prior, when Italy took on France, we saw the draw. It was all but a win for the Italians.
Mm.
But yeah, this game's going to be very intriguing to see who wants it more because we are going to see Italy at home. I feel like that's the big difference. They were up against France in France and they still performed to quite a high level. Scotland away from home, they have shown that they've been strong in the first half of that contest up against Wales. Then second half, just something went wrong. So they've got to make sure that discipline is on point. And if they can, I see them walking away with a relatively comfortable win. I feel like they'll be able to break down the Italians a lot better than we saw France do.
Yeah, I mean, like, and going off that point you said in terms of the discipline, I mean, we kind of saw the same thing in that England game, actually, funny enough, where Duan van der Merwe, of course, scored a hat trick against the English, which was incredible. But of course, he gets Simbin straight after scoring his third try. So, yeah, definitely kind of just to work on their discipline, I guess, going into that second half. But no, I think overall, Scotland have been very impressive. And again, you can't underestimate the Italians because, they did really put in a shift against the French kind of 2 weeks ago. And it's going to be really. I would like to think it would be a closer contest, but at the same time, like if there wasn't like a week gap in between us, I would actually feel a bit more confident. I'd have a lot more confidence in Italy maybe producing something here. But because there's
Yeah.
been a bit of a break in between, obviously the weeks, so I kind of feel like Scotland are going to be able to kind of recharge themselves and just kind of be prepared for this one. So yeah, my head's kind of going towards Scotland in this game, but I mean. I guess in terms of like a one's the watch player for this one, like if I had to name one for myself, I'd probably I mean I want to say just Duhan van der Merwe because he was so impressive against the English, but I feel that's like the obvious answer. So I kind of want to go with someone different here. I don't know, like maybe like Blair Kinghorn. I think like Blair Kinghorn, someone I'm gonna look out for in this one. So yeah, he's kind of my ones to watch for this. Like, how about you? Like, if there's a ones to watch player from either side, like, is there one that you're kind of looking out for?
In terms of key players, Scotland as a whole, their side have been working very nicely together throughout the Six Nations so far. I'd say that midfield combo, whether it's going to be Tui Piloto and Hugh Jones
Mm.
or whoever ends up taking on that 12 and 13 jersey, I think that they're going to be extremely important in the way that the ball gets out to their wingers. Because, like you mentioned, Duan van der Merwe, he's been on a tear, but I think some of the distribution to him has been what has really set Scotland apart in terms of that attack out wide. So, yeah, I'd say that 13, whether it's Hugh Jones, whether they're going to make a little bit of an adjustment in that midfield, I think it's going to be extremely crucial that Scotland keep that ball flowing and, of course, have that big loose forward trio to be able to keep that ball on their side up against what will be a passionate Italian side. They will be going into every breakdown that they can, and I mean, they'll feel pretty confident. At the end of the day, they took France to the limit. They also had a very good showing up against the English. So there's nothing saying that they can't win this game if they really get it right here. And I mean, if you tell the Italians they've got just a slither of a chance, that's normally when they're the most dangerous.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting because, I mean, like, actually, I only just remembered this, but in terms of that centre accommodation for the Scottish, they actually don't have Tupeloto anymore. I believe he's out for the remainder of the Six Nations because he picked up an injury, obviously, against the English. So they're going to have to make a reshuffle there, and obviously a new pairing really with Hugh Jones most likely. So I'm not sure who that'll be. We'll see obviously who they have in mind when the lineups are announced, as we don't know the lineups, of course, at this time. But no, it's going to be interesting to see kind of who they go with because that could obviously determine how kind of the back line functions. But yeah, no, again, I'm going to probably go the Scottish. I've been pretty clear on that. I assume, is that the same for you, or do you think the Italians could do it?
No, I'm going Scotland, but I don't think it will be as one-sided as some anticipate.
Okay. I do think this will be a one-sided one, but I could be wrong. But moving on, obviously, towards the next one, which is going to be England versus Ireland. This is definitely the big game of the Six Nations. I'm looking forward to this one a lot. Again, this is going to kind of really just determine really if the final round is as good as it can be in a weird way because, you know, I kind of wish that whole France-Scotland incident didn't even happen in terms of the TMO, but obviously that's kind of the past now. We have to kind of look forward. And yeah, this is really where England just have to stop Ireland and do Scotland a favor and be able to beat them at Twickenham. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can do it. Again, a lot of these, both squads actually have a lot of returning players. You know, you have the likes of Ian Henderson, Ollie Jaeger, Hugo Keane, who I believe are available going into this game now. You have the likes of Alex Mitchell and Marcus Smith also coming back in contention for the English. So it seems that both squads have a few players in there which can kind of fill in the gaps and kind of help the team out. But yeah, it's going to come down towards which team is just better on the day. And I mean, Ireland have been sensational throughout the Six Nations so far. I mean, they've got a bonus point victory within every single game so far. So they'll be looking to kind of continue that streak and be the first team to ever first team to get ever a back-to-back Grand Slam, but also to be the first team that gets a bonus point like every game Grand Slam. So that would be pretty impressive. But yeah, kind of what's your thoughts on this one? Because like I said, this is definitely the key matchup of this round.
Well, you mentioned how England need to do Scotland a favour, and I can tell you right now, if the English win that game, they certainly aren't winning it for Scotland. They're winning it for themselves, but of course, the little bit of a bonus goes the way of the Scottish. England beaten by Scotland not too long ago, and I don't think it made them too happy at all, because to be honest, like England going into the Six Nations, a lot of people thought they would be somewhere near that mid to top contention, but they just haven't quite been able to get it right, I don't think. Throughout this year, as of yet, they've lacked the ability to score tries when it's mattered. And up against a clinical Irish side, when you give them any sort of opportunity, they turn it into 7 points. And that is also something that England's defence may be very, very tested throughout this contest because Ireland will throw everything at them. They'll throw the kitchen sink. We know that they want bonus points. We saw them score one late up against Wales. That did actually give them that bonus point, but that was the first time it looked like they weren't going to be able to get one. This game, I think it's going to be a relatively high-scoring one, but then saying that, if it gets down to the gritty, grindy style and it's a low-scoring game, a lot of people would still, even at Twickenham, give the advantage to the men in green.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is definitely in favor of the Irish going into this game. It's one of those where you can't really say England going into this have the the best odds because it's really not against. I'd say it is kind of against them going into this game, but at the same time, you know, they are playing at Twickenham. You know, we haven't they will have that kind of home advantage. Probably hope that kind of comes into their favor. And yeah, it's one of those where the English just they've been trying to do different stuff within each game, and it just hasn't worked out for them. In all honesty, I think even like the Italy and Wales wins that they got, like I still don't think they were like impressive wins. I think they were just more like where they just got by. And yeah, it's one of those like where they definitely need to change their brand of rugby, I'd say, because from a defensive point of view, I can definitely say that they've looked slightly better, and that's really the only compliment I can give. But besides that, like it's just their attacking rugby. It's just it's not what we've seen before. So it's kind of something which they definitely need to work on, and particularly going into a game against the Irish, it's going to be pretty crucial if you want to kind of beat them within this game. But yeah, I guess in terms of your ones to watch play for this one, who do you have your eye on?
Well, that's the thing. England need to be pretty much perfect in that 9-10 channel. Because if they're not, when you look at the Irish ruck speed and how they've got the quickest ruck of the Six Nations so far, and that is just because every single time the ball gets recycled and they're off, they've already got that next play set. I think for England, of course, we are used to seeing the ball get rolled back and then put up normally about 5 seconds later. But I feel like the Irish by that stage are going to really put in a good counter ruck to try and cause a bit of disruption. So England, I think they're 9-10. Whoever it is, we don't know yet, of course. More than likely we'll see George Ford at 10, but maybe Marcus Smith makes a return at 10 for this game up against the Irish. Look at more of the younger attacking option with him versus Crowley. Could be quite an entertaining head-to-head. But yeah, they need to get that ball out quickly. If they're going to go with Marcus Smith at 10, I think Danny Kerr is the only logical option at 9 so that they have the Quins combo. But who knows? At the end of the day, we have to wait and see who it's going to be.
Yeah, like you said, they have options definitely on 9-10 spots. So it's good. That could really determine kind of what happens in this game. But yeah, I guess for me, in terms of my ones to watch, I'm kind of looking towards Maro Itoje, I'd say, in this one, just because Ireland's lineouts it's arguably the best in the world. I think in terms of those set pieces from a lineouts, like they're really, when you have the likes of James Ryan, Tagburn, Ian Henderson, now Joe McCarthy. So it's like they have some really good locks in there in terms of and depth. And I think Toje will have a lot of work on his hands going into this game, and he will have to really kind of disrupt the Irish kind of lineouts for England to even have a chance in terms of like retaining possession at times and kind of getting Ireland, just pressuring Ireland really throughout this whole game. So yeah, I think he's going to be a key figure in this one if England are to win. So that's kind of why I'm looking out, hoping that he kind of does well in this one. But yeah, again, in terms of who you think will win this, who do you think will win?
I've got to go with the Irish. They're on a streak at the moment again, and
yeah,
they're looking very hard to beat. We saw Wales look the closest out of anyone, and looking at the score, they weren't really that close. So I'm going with the Irish.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I think my head's kind of going towards the Irish as well. Like, obviously, I kind of I'm hoping the English do something in this game, but it's definitely the Irish that have just have England's number really at this point in time, I think. So yeah, I think the Irish is also where I'm leaning towards as well. But yeah, going into the final game, of course, which will be Wales versus France. This game will be played on the Sunday, but yeah, it should be an interesting matchup because these two sides, actually, in a weird way, are probably the two sides which have kind of been. How do I say this nicely? I'm trying to think this in a way, in a nicer way of saying this. They've definitely underperformed. I think these are the two sides that have underperformed the most, I think, in this Six Nations so far. And that's maybe a bit harsh to say, but I think
that's a bit harsh on Wales. I feel like with their young side, they've actually overperformed in this Six Nations competition. No one thought that they had a chance.
But Wales haven't had anything like it's one of those where Wales have to like produce it. That's the problem. They've had good games, but they haven't been able to like get that next step.
It's that last point, isn't it? It's like when they were up against Scotland having that second half comeback, but they just didn't quite cross the line. It's like how they've had it
the opposite way around, like where they were leading and then they gave up the lead. So it's like there's a bit of like a thing with them at the moment. So that's why I just think they need to sort a lot of things out in order for them to kind of get back to the Wales we all obviously knew in kind kind of loved watching. But again, like you said, obviously it is a very young squad, so I do understand that point. But I still think both sides have underperformed in the Six Nations, particularly France, because of course they're seen as one of the favorites going into the tournament, and they've lost now to Ireland at home, and they drew against Italy at home. So their home form has been definitely not up the standards really for what you expect of the French, because it's kind of crazy to think they haven't even won a game there this Six Nations so far. So again, this game will be away, so it could be in a weird way, it could be in France's favor, because that's their only victory they've had so far is away to Scotland, which was obviously kind of I guess what a key fixture to look back at. Kind of when the Six Nation ends, but it's gonna be interesting to see what happens here, because again, Wales is the only squad, funny enough, that have announced their lineup as we record this video, guys, and it seems like the same squad. Like the only big change really that they've made is that they've actually put Jenkins at the number 6 this time, who's the captain. Shifted him from the lock position towards the 6, and they've been including Adam Beard and Rollins there as the 4 and 5. But besides that, it's a pretty standard, kind of the standard side that we saw in the previous games. No really big changes there. Like the only one I could think of is that they haven't gone with there's no George North in this one. But I think besides that, it's just the standard squad for what you kind of expected. But kind of what's your take on this one in terms of Wales France? Do you think it'll be a hotly contested battle, or do you think one side will have the edge?
Well, we're still waiting for France to show what got them through to those quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup. We're waiting for those big performances. They've got debatably one of the best squads that they've had, with the exception of, I guess you could say, Antoine Dupont and Roman Intermac. Everyone else in that backline, Damien Pinot, he's been underperforming throughout the Six Nations competition. They've got Galfiku and also the big men in the midfield that just don't seem to be able to get the job done. With Jonathan Dante, there's just something that's not working. They've got a great forward pack, but you don't see them in the game, unfortunately. It seems like they get out-muscled in most of the breakdowns. And I think that's why, in this case, this is Wales probably their best chance to beat France in quite some time, because even though, yes, you could say Wales haven't been able to get the results that they are after throughout the Six Nations, they've still been able to stay competitive in their contests, and I think that is something that's going to be extremely crucial up against the French, because we saw what happened when Italy kept competitive with France. They couldn't quite lift to that next level to really seal the deal, and they could have lost that game. In fact, they were extremely close to losing that game. Their one up against Scotland, they were extremely close to losing that game, kind of, because they almost did. And then their first game up against the Irish, they just didn't turn up. So this one here, Wales, if there's ever a time to beat the French, it is right now.
It's now. Yeah. No, I agree with. I think this is definitely Wales's biggest chance for a long time, because I actually can't remember the last time Wales. I think the last time Wales beat France at home was when actually Wales won the Grand Slam back in 2019. So it's been a while actually since the last. I mean, I could be wrong obviously with that, because I know that Wales are beating France in the reverse fixture. I think twice actually, but at home they haven't been able to do it in a while. So that's why it'll be interesting to see what kind of happens in this kind of fixture. Again, we do know, of course, that Jonathan Dante will not be available for this one, because I think he's just out for the entire Six Nations now, because due to that kind of red card he got against the Italians. And again, I've seen that the French have actually sent a few players they've kind of just removed them from the squad now. The big one being Cameron Walkie, who's not actually in this now. So that's a big call, because he's actually I actually really do appreciate him as a player. I think he's up there with the very best, but again, he just hasn't been on form. And that's just it's just a fact. He just has not been the same Cameron Walkie we've seen in previous Six Nation tournaments. So I understand that decision. Even Tung Langi has been kind of I guess recalled towards his club side. But again, the French are gonna have to make some few moves in here. It's gonna be fascinating to see if they can kind of come back into this and kind of, I guess, resurrected within this game. But this one I think will be a very close one. I think it's gonna go under the radar as maybe one of the best games of the weekend, actually, because I think this could be one of those where both sides are kind of at the same level. in terms of like where they are, and this could be a high scoring game in my opinion. But in terms of my kind of ones to watch for this one, I'm kind of looking towards I'd say the Welsh in this. I'm looking towards there's a lot of players I can name here, but I've said him in the past, and he didn't kind of live up to the expectations in the game I said previously. But I want to go with Wimlet there, the number 15 spot. I think he really impressed me in that kind of Scotland game. And again, he wasn't able to kind of do well with that England game. He kind of led to a lot of mistakes in that one, unfortunately. But I'm hoping he kind of rebounds going into this one and kind of just kind of really help the Welsh in that department, because again, he's gonna have to go against the likes of Thomas Ramos, his opposing 15, and that'll be a really good battle in those spots. So yeah, Wimlet is the guy I'm kind of looking out for in terms of this game. What about yourself?
See, for the French, I mentioned him a little bit earlier on, and he's got potential to do what Duan van der Merwe did in the game up against the English, and that's Damien Penaud.
Yeah.
You just need to see a bit more of him, but he's almost been invisible throughout the Six Nations competition. They've also got Belbarri, of course, as another very capable winger that they could use. Moana might go to 12 in terms of who would replace Jonathan Dante, perhaps. Or have they got Fakatava in the squad? If they do, we've hardly heard about him, have we?
I haven't heard that name in a while. I don't believe so. I would have known about it if he was. I could be wrong, but is he? I don't even think he's playing international rugby anymore. I think
he's retired, isn't he?
Yeah, I don't think he's. Yeah, I don't think he's in the conversation, unfortunately. But he would have been great, obviously, to be a.
Yeah, they need someone like that though, because Dante hasn't been performing, has he? Like Moana is great, but he doesn't quite have that same power, I guess you could say, as some of those other 12s that France have had in the past. But yeah, Damien Penaud, if he can get himself involved in this game heavily, I think that he'll find success. He just has to go searching for that work off the wing and try his absolute best to just keep in the fight and help the French side really just go out there and put it on the line. The problem, though, is I think there's a bit more behind-the-scenes stuff than we know about. Anyway, there seems to be a lot of problems behind closed doors, and you wonder whether or not is that something to do with why so many players have been given back to their squads. Is there something that's really going wrong with French rugby? And if so, then Wales need to capitalise. Like I said, best chance ever for the Welsh to beat the French.
And on that, are you kind of favouring the French for this or the Welsh in terms of your winner?
You know what? Why not? I'll say Wales win this game. At the end of the day, I talked them up, and I said that France is struggling, so I can't really go but France to beat them by 20. Exactly. I'll go Wales in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if France finally perform, but I think that the Welsh have better momentum heading into this game, even though they have lost more games.
Yeah. No, I think for this one, I would say Wales. Like it's one of those like where I mean the most if you're doing like the odds and all that, I mean it's obviously going to be in France's favor, but I just think Wales at home, just a lot. I think that, like you said, is really the key word. Like you said, there is momentum. I think that's kind of with them going into this game, and I think they kind of like that draw against Italy kind of like was a stinger, really kind of blown away, because they needed that kind of to kind of I guess like just put a bit of hope, I guess, in the French squad, kind of moving forward into these games. So I'm gonna go with the Welsh. But yeah. Anyway, we'll move on then towards the six. We'll move away from the Six Nations and move on towards Super Rugby now. And again, Super Rugby Pacific. We're going into round 3 this time, and there's some key matchups here. I'll just quickly talk about them. We do have Rebels versus. We have Moana Pacifica versus Rebels. We have what else do we have? Sorry, I'm just getting this up now, guys. We have Moana Pacifica versus Rebels, Waratahs versus Highlanders, Fijian Drua versus Crusaders, Brumbies versus Force, Hurricanes versus Blues, and Reds versus Chiefs. So some good games overall there. In terms of the Friday matchups, the first one being, of course, Moana Pacifica versus Rebels. That'll be played, I believe, within New Zealand. So, kind of what's your take on that one in terms of the game overall?
Well, it's an intriguing game because both of these sides coming off victories in the Super round. Moana Pacifica pulling off the win up against the Fijian Drua, and the Rebels being able to beat the Western Force, both having high-scoring contests with a bit of back and forth. It's going to be very tricky to know how the Rebels will perform, seeing as this game they will be away from home. They got a big opportunity here to see whether or not they can perform on the road as well as at Amy Park. But Moana Pacifica, I feel like the physicality that those men have been bringing will actually really help them, although the longer the Rebels play together as a team with all those new signings, the better they will get. But yeah, I'd still probably say Moana Pacifica just a little tiny bit of an edge. I see that they are underdogs, but I would say that, I'd say they're going to be in with a decent crack in this contest.
No, I also agree. I actually think, this could be a wrong thing to say, but I think actually Moana Pacificas are the favorites actually going into this game because I don't think they've been the better side throughout the first 3 rounds for what we've seen. The Rebels have been a bit lackluster at times. Again, they had that impressive game against the Western Force last week, of course, but the previous one against the Brumbies was just was not a good watch. And I think for both Moana Pacifica games, they've actually been impressive in both. So I definitely think going into this one, again, being their first home game, it's in their favor, I think. So that's why I think my head's kind of saying Moana Pacifica for this one. But in terms of your kind of ones to watch for this one, who are you looking out for?
Well, I think that for Moana Pacifica, a man who we've lacked seeing in the sevens is Malani Matavao. And I've been wanting to see him for Samoa because they have been struggling big time. I do see that he's coming off the bench here for Moana Pacifica in the later stages of the contest. So I'm actually going to go with him. But in terms of the starting lineup, I think that's someone that is definitely one to watch out for. Sadly, they haven't got him in this lineup. Well, I was going to go with, of course, the man who was out on the left wing in the last game. But I'm going with Julian Savia, the bus. I feel like we need to see him more than we saw him in the game up against the Fijian Drua, where I'll be honest, I didn't really see him a huge amount. I think that he was almost invisible in that back line. But I would have gone with Finney if he was there, but seeing as he's not, I'm going to go with Savia with Matavao as the honourable mention.
Fair enough. I agree with you, actually. Sevilla was really nowhere to be seen in that game against the Fijian Drua. And again, you have to remember, he's only 1 try away from breaking the Super Rugby all-time try scoring. So it's every game he goes into, I'm kind of hoping he does it. So I kind of want to say also Julian Sevilla because it's the key player to look out for in this one. But I guess just kind of give a bit of because you've gone with one Pacifica player, I'll go with one of the Rebels. For this one, it's they have some good players in there, the Rebels. You know what, actually? I'm going to actually say Lachlan Sakai Lota. I think he's been a very good player for the Rebels recently. He kind of impressed me, I think, in that Western Force game in terms of just able to kind of carry the ball through in terms of lineouts and set pieces. He was really dominant in those areas. So I think he's going to be a key player to at least disrupt the Moana Pacifica when it comes towards those set pieces. So that's kind of where I'm looking at from a Rebels standpoint. But I am with you, though, in saying that I think Moana Pacifica will win this. So I think we're both saying a win for Moana Pacifica in that case. But moving on then towards the second of the games in terms of Friday, we do have Waratahs versus Highlanders. And this will be a good game, I think. One of the best games, actually, I think, this week, actually, because, the Waratahs are coming off a very, very impressive victory over the Crusaders. And the Highlanders just missing out against the Blues. But again, have still been impressive in their 2 games, I believe, as well. And it'll be a good matchup, I think, because, both these sides will be wanting to get a win under their belts. And I think it's going to be a very kind of I want to say an even game, but it's one of those where now the Waratahs have beaten the Crusaders. I'm like, is it in their favor? I don't know. Or maybe the Crusaders aren't that good this year. It is actually an even match. But can I say the Crusaders aren't that good? It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if that's the wrong thing to say. So what's your take on this one?
I think it's going to be a close game. Like you said, if either of these sides were to run away with it now after last week, it seems like it could be the Waratahs. But then we also look at what the Highlanders have been able to do over their last few weeks and some of the tries that they have scored themselves, and you go, okay, they're going to be a lot more in this contest than some anticipate. But certainly the Tars, they'll be feeling on cloud 9 at the moment after that victory last week, but they'll know that the job's not done yet. Of course, it's all well and good getting 1 win, but you've got to back it up, and back-to-back wins over New Zealand sides, something that really happens for an Australian team. But perhaps the Waratahs can continue that trend, get themselves a big win here. In terms of the key players, I have one for each team, and it's actually the same jersey. I'm going the number 10 battle. Taine Edmed versus Reece
I was gonna say
Batchel.
the exact same thing.
You see
Yeah,
how I
exact
jumped in
same
front of
thing.
you so that I could say it rather
Yeah.
than you get it to? But Taine Edmed and also Reece Batchel. I think that both of them, respectively, had brilliant games last week for their sides. And yeah, whoever distributes that ball just that little bit better, I think could have a lot more success here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you fully. I mean, that's the two I had in mind as well, so I'm not going to change it. I think these two really will determine who wins this game because, like you said, Ted Edmund I thought was brilliant within that game against the Crusaders. Really kind of, I guess, was the conductor, this at least, in that game in terms of distributing the ball out, finding the gaps in that Crusaders defense. And yeah, just really he did a really good job. And I think Joe Schmidt was actually impressed by that for what I've seen. Through kind of a podcast that he was on. So he mentioned him as one of the players he was impressed by. So that's a good sign, obviously, for him. And yeah, going obviously towards Reece Patchell, who I've you know me, I've always backed this guy from the very beginning. I thought he's been outstanding. And it was really yeah, he's gone another level really. And it's just funny because you're looking at Wales, of course, who were playing this week against the likes of the French, and yeah, you could honestly I would honestly start him for what I've seen so far in these games within Super Rugby. So if he can just continue what he's been doing, then I think he can definitely help the Highlanders win this game. But yeah, I mean that combination that he has with Pasifika, though, I think it's arguably been the best 9-10 combination. That could be is it a bad thing to say? I'm trying to think if there's been one better. I think like what Chiefs have had. I mean, they've had Sherry Rowe and Cortez Latimer, but they've kind of gone on and off. And then you have McKenzie, who's been a bit on and off because he's not had every minute to play. Then like Blues, you've had Parafeta, and then yeah, no, I think I would honestly say Reece Patchell and Pasifika have been the best 9-10 combination I've seen so far within Super Rugby. So I think if they can just continue that, then I think they're going to do a good job. But I guess for my take on this one, it's a tough game actually. I think this is a really tough game to call because my head obviously is just saying the Highlanders because they've always just been the team you would say straight off the bat going into this game. But the Waratahs were really good last week, and I think they'll be able to continue that. So I'm actually going to go with the Waratahs for this one. I'm actually going to go for the Waratahs. That may be a bold claim, but I don't know. It may ruin my prediction kind of game that we have going on. But yeah, I'm going to go with the Waratahs.
Fair enough. They are actually favourites heading into it in terms of the betting odds. See, I want to go the Waratahs as well, but then I feel like the Highlanders, though,
they're good.
They just have been good this season. And if that 9-10 combo fires, I think that it's going to be a hard day at the office for the Tars. So, of course, strategically, if I went with the same as you, we don't have any changes in terms of the predictions, but I'm going to mix it up. I feel like this is one of those weeks that, seeing as we've had the Super round already, we might as well keep it Super, and we're going to go with the Highlanders on my side for who's going to win this game. Away from home, 2 underdogs for Friday night. So I've gone with here.
Fair enough. But,
crazy.
But yeah, moving on towards those Saturday games, of course, we do the first one being Fijian Drua versus the Crusaders. This will be a very big game because in previous seasons Fijian Drua have been very impressive actually, and I think that they actually beat the Crusaders, which is probably it was like the defining game for them that kind of kickstarted their kind of whole campaign in a way. Funny enough, so. They'll be kind of looking to do the same thing and going into this one because, of course, they have lost their first 2 games, but respectively, it's against the likes of the Blues, which is always going to be a tough matchup, and then Moana Pasifika, that can really go either way because that's always been a high-scoring game between those two sides. So this will be a key one for them, and of course, it will be at home. It'll be their first home fixtures, and that's a very important thing to say because Fijian Drua, like we both know, are just a completely different team. And just an animal, really, when they play at home, they're just so awesome to watch. So I definitely think this may be a bold shot, but I think Fiji is actually the favorite going into this game. So I'm actually going to say Fijian Drua as my team to win. But I know in terms of my ones to watch player, they're actually bringing back a few players into this, and I think Drua CSC is actually back into this, if I'm not mistaken, at that 15 spot. So he's the player I'm looking out for in this one because. Again, that back line has been a bit, I guess, off a bit. I mean, Ratumala has been pretty good, but I think besides that, Momo, I'm trying to think, he's been all right, but they haven't really found that kind of, I think, that the correct free at the moment, and I'm hoping that George CSC can be the guy that kind of fills in that gap in terms of that 15 spots. So that's kind of my take in terms of the ones to watch and my winner. How about you? What's your winner and ones to watch for this one?
Of course, in the betting odds, the Fijian Drua are underdogs. But I agree with you. I think off current Crusaders form, they certainly aren't anywhere near as much of a favourite as most people would have had them coming into the contest. The thing that concerns me about the Crusaders for this game is their reserves. Like looking through, there's really no notable names other than Mitchell Drummond. He's probably the only guy that a lot of, I guess, part-time rugby watchers would actually know of. Like, in terms of the fact that they haven't got Moody there, they haven't got Franks. I don't know whether this is all injury-based or whether they're just trying to rotate their squad, but their backline, of course, looking a little bit stronger. Willie Hines starting at 9, I think, will be a good thing. But whether or not he can match the tempo that Frank Lamani tries to set in this game will be extremely intriguing. I think that the Fijian Drua have a great chance of winning this game as well. It's just whether or not David Havili can perform, I think, is the big question of the Crusaders, because if he steps up, like last week, we'll be honest, worst performance we've seen from David Havili maybe ever in that game for the Crusaders up against the Waratahs. He scored more tries for the Waratahs than the Waratahs scored for themselves in that contest. But I think that if he's able to perform, they'll have a lot better chance because they have got a strong backline for this contest. But then so do the Fijian Drua. So I'm going to say the Fijian Drua to get themselves the victory here, just because it's very hard not to back a Fijian side when they're playing in Fiji. And key player to watch out for, I'm going with Celestino Ravatamanda. I feel like his line break ability recently has been outstanding. The way he's able to create gaps and open up space for the Drua, even when they're inside of their own 22. I think that is something that with counter-attacking rugby in Fiji, that's one of the best ways of scoring tries, when your opposition think, right, we've got this one, and then you just take the ball, run 90 metres, put it down between the posts and say, cheers, mate. That's all we needed.
Yeah, no, like Roger Manda was like brilliant actually in that game against the Moana Pasifika. Like he had that one where he just kind of broke free of the Moana Pasifika defense and just, like you said, just his speed just killed them at the end of the day. But I will say, though, that the Crusaders could do something in this game, but a lot will depend on that center combination with Havili and Levi Mua, because in a weird way, I can't believe I'm saying this, but both players haven't performed, I think, to the best of their ability, I think, so far going into this season. Again, obviously, with David Havili, you kind of, yes, he didn't have the best of games in that Waratahs one, but at the same time, I kind of want to give him a bit of leeway because he's only just coming back into rugby now because he was out for a while. So I need to see a few more games from him. I'm giving him a bit of leeway, but it's one of those like where if he continues this, then I mean, like I'm gonna go on the same boat as you, like where he definitely needs to, I don't know, pick up the pace really. But of course, with every rugby player, you need to kind of get into the mix of things and, if you can, just execute straight off the back. But yeah, no, going into the second game, of course, of this Saturday, we do have the likes of Brumbies versus Force. And in my opinion, this could be the most one-sided game we could have. I could be wrong. Again, the Force could bring it. They've always been pretty competitive, actually, against the Brumbies, now that I think about it in the past. But I don't know. It'll be a good matchup, this. Like, what's your take on this one?
This is a game, I'll be honest, Tim, I have no idea about. Not so much in terms of the players, but in terms of what's going to actually happen throughout this 80 minutes. Because the Brumbies up against the Chiefs, like, they just didn't look like the Brumbies that everyone expected to see going into that game. People thought that would be a close fixture. We were included in that, and it just wasn't. Whereas the Force, they've been beaten every week, but they haven't done badly, if that makes sense. Like, they still score 30 or so points per game. It's just the fact that their opposition score 40. So, like, if the Brumbies aren't clinical early in this game and they don't get themselves a heap of points, and the Western Force, just slowly grind it out like they have been throughout the season, I think that, like, the Force, they are the biggest underdog of the weekend, but they could actually cause an upset here if the Brumbies don't get their A into G. So, like, It's going to be a very intriguing game. I have no idea what's going to happen. The safe bet, of course, is to say that the Brumbies will win, and that's what I'm going to do, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see that massive underdog pull off the win. Players to watch, I know you want to say them, but I'm going to go first. Corey Toole out on that left wing for the Brumbies. Of course, one to watch out for after his sensational work over the last 2 weeks of Super Rugby Pacific. Even in the Chiefs, he was the shining light of the Brumbies side. So yeah, I'm going with Corey Toole as the man to watch out for.
Yeah, no, I love that shout. That's pretty good. I mean, he's been impressive throughout this whole Super season so far, getting 4 tries to his name, getting double within both games he's played so far. To give a bit of respect, obviously, towards the Western Force in this one, I actually think Horton, Tom Horton, the hooker for them, had a pretty impressive game against the Rebels last week. Got I think a few tries actually under his belt. Maybe one or I think it was. I know he got one. I'm not sure if it was 2, but I know he got one for sure. So yeah, I think he's kind of a key player for this one because the Western Force do rely heavily on that kind of set piece play that they have in terms of lineouts. But at the same time, the Brumbies are probably the best team. Well, they're literally they're most well known for their set piece play in terms of that lineout. So it's going to be pretty difficult to kind of break them down in that area. But at the same time, if there's one player who's stood out so far in terms of that hooker spot, I'd say Horton's been pretty impressive. I mean, you could say probably the same thing for Matt Vazer because he had a pretty good game last week, but we'll get onto him later on. But I think for now, I'd say Horton just for this one. But I am also in the same boat as you where I'm going to put my my intuition towards the Brumbies for this one. But yeah, again, moving on towards the final 2. First one being Hurricanes versus Blues to start off the Sunday games. This is going to be a Goliath of a match, you could say the least, because both teams going into this one, obviously, with 2 wins under their belt. Hurricanes having 2 good wins, one away against the Western Force, and of course, technically away against the Rebels in Melbourne. And the Reds in Melbourne. And then, of course, with the Blues, they've beaten the likes of Fijian as well as Highlanders. So, yeah, some good wins, I think, for both sides. And again, this one is going to be an interesting battle because, of course, there is no Jordy Barrett going into this game. And I believe I've seen within the it's been released that he's going to be out for 3 weeks, which is it's a key decision, I'd say, because that could really determine how this goes actually going into this one. But if I actually look now, because I actually haven't seen who's replacing him in terms of that 12 spots.
It is Riley Higgins.
Riley Higgins, so it's the guy, it's who you said. Yes, is who you said. So we'll see if he can bring it up to it. Again, his partner in crime will be Billy Proctor, so that could be a good combination there. Again, Ruben loved that 15 spot. I mean, it's really just it's the same kind of back line we saw last week, except for obviously that 12. And then, going into the forwards, it's, not really a lot of changes there. I mean, so they have a pretty good squad actually going into this one. Again, Peter Mungan-Jensen actually off the bench as well. That'll be good to see him because we haven't seen him in a long time. But I know for the Blues, however, I mean, I'm trying to think if they've made a lot of changes going into this one. I guess they have Harry Plummer at the 12 spots instead of Bryce Heem there. And they've reverted back now towards Finley Christie at the number 9. But besides that, actually, what am I on about?
Big one.
Tutu isn't even playing. Yeah. So Tutu's probably the key one actually that's not even playing for this one. Akira is actually filling in towards that 8 spots, and that will mean that Anton Segner will fill in towards that 6. So I think that's probably the key one in terms of all the changes so far, because Tutu's definitely he's arguably been the best player I think so far within Super Rugby. So it's interesting to see that he's not. I guess they're resting him for this game. Hopefully there isn't an injury, but I think they're just resting him for this.
He's off the bench.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. But so what's your take on this one? Do you think it'll be a competitive game, or do you think one side will have the edge on the other?
Well, it's a round of underdogs, Tim. For some reason, it's going to be funny if every single favourite wins, but I just don't see it happening for this round of the competition. I don't know why. But I'm slightly edging towards the Hurricanes here. Just a little bit.
I thought you were about to say the Highlanders.
I almost did say the Highlanders, but I caught myself. But the Hurricanes, I think that, to be honest, they haven't looked too bad throughout their last few games. They're one up against the Reds, of course, going to Golden Point time. They have multiple opportunities where they could have helped secure that win a little bit sooner than they did, but just little decisions went wrong. And to be honest, I have no idea how this Highlanders and Hurricanes preseason game impacts where the two sides are sitting, because I know that there were a huge amount of points scored throughout that game, and mainly scored by the Highlanders, I believe. The Hurricanes did end up getting beaten maybe 52-14 or something like that, I think. Somewhere around there was the score, but could be wrong on that.
Yeah.
I think that not having Satutu in the starting lineup is a bold choice for the Blues, but then I can understand why they've done it. They want to keep on rotating those loose forwards around. She's a hard game to predict, but yeah, I just feel like I'm excited to see what Riley Higgins at 12 can do, because I know on the review last week you said he's no Geordie Barrett. And then we mentioned how Geordie Barrett wasn't really...
I've seen him play before. Like, he's not...
He's had some X-Factor games, though, throughout his career for the Hurricanes. And also in domestic competition in New Zealand, he has stepped up massively. Current form, I'd take him over David Harvili, that's for sure. But, I think the midfield combo is going to help them big time here for the Hurricanes. I'll just say the Hurricanes are going to win it. Why not? And I'm going to say key player Riley Higgins, number 12, just because I know that will burn in the back of the mind. If he has a really good game and he's the reason the Blues lose, that name will be echoing in your nightmares for the next 4 weeks.
Exactly. Riley Higgins gets the winning try against the Blues. Hamish was correct.
We'll have to put that as the title of the review.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's going to be fascinating, this one, because I honestly think, like, in the previous years, this has always been a very, very close game. And it's one of those, like, where actually, when you look back even before the previous 2 years, I'd say, the Hurricanes have always had the Blues number, actually, in a lot of results, because it's kind of just edged towards their favor, particularly at home. They've always been able to kind of do the job there, but I think in the recent years, actually, the Blues have actually got their number now. I think winning the last 2 away, and I think, like I said in the review before, I think honestly this is the first time in a while where I feel really confident in the Blues and how they've been playing so far, and I think they'll be able to kind of break down this Hurricanes team. I just think they'll be able to do it. Again, it could be a close game. I'm not going to deny that. It could definitely be a close game, but I just don't think the Hurricanes will win this. I don't know why. I just have this confidence about it for this game. I could just be deluded, and it's gonna just haunt me obviously back towards the when the results happen. But no, I honestly do think the Blues will be able to win this one. And I think in terms of my man of the match, well, not man of the match, but for my my ones to watch for this one, I mean, I kind of want to just say Harry Plummer now, just so that it's like the key player against Riley Higgins, but no, I think for this one, I'm going to say Kirill just because him playing the number 8 spot is going to be a kind of a throwback to me, because that's where he kind of played at the very beginning for the Blues when he kind of came onto the scene, and he was like unstoppable. And I mean, like, one of the best 8s I ever saw within Super Rugby when he was first playing. Like, him at 8, and you had like Stephen Luatua at the number 6, and you had like he was at you had Luatua actually at the 7 at times, and then you had Jerome Kano at the 6. Like, that was like I was like, oh my gosh, this is like an insane kind of like back row we had there at the time. But like loose 4-pack, I mean, but it was just he was dangerous back then. So I'm hoping he can kind of replicate the same thing with this one. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Can't get my hopes up as high, but yeah, I will say the Blues are the team that I'm going for this one. But
because the thing is, Tim, we also never mentioned the elephant in the room for the Hurricanes, which of course is the fact that TJ Perenara is playing his first game for the Hurricanes off the bench. Yeah. The 9 combo of Roygaard and Perenara, is it something that somehow could end up being an All Blacks one? I know that Perenara, he hasn't completely given up on that idea yet. Do they need someone with his experience? We're going to have to see a lot from him, though, because there's all these young players at the moment in Super Rugby that are doing extremely well, but there's no Aaron Smith, of course, for the ABs now. So, who's that experienced guy you get in? Is it Finley Christie? He's had a few caps, like 20 something, hasn't he?
It's crazy.
Around there.
He could technically be the most experienced player, like out of like, the likely bunch, at least. Like out of all the likely players, like in a way, he could be like the most experienced. Because I do think, yes, you are right. I did see an interview with TJ, kind of on the front row show, kind of saying how he still wants to be in the conversation for the All Blacks this year going forward, and he kind of want to kind of just hope the coaches obviously see that as well. And I think they will obviously take a look at him, of course, because he is just a legend in terms of that 9 jersey for the All Blacks. But I think going forward, it's a sort of a new cycle. So it will be very difficult for him to get in because, like you say, there's a number of players who've really been impressive so far. Like, I mean, we've talked about Finlay Christie. There's Cam Morgan, of course, who will be the top of the list, really. You'll have, like, Cortis Latimer. You'll have Xavier Rowe. You could even have, I would even have Mitchell Drummond over, in a weird way, over TJ Perenara, because I think he's always been a very underrated player for the Crusaders. So, yeah, there's a lot of competition, I'd say, in that spots. But hey, you never know. Like TJ Perenara, if he gets onto form and somehow scores more tries than Cam Morgan this year, then that would definitely get the attention of Razor. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But he could definitely be a good impact player, that's for sure. Definitely be a very good impact player. But again, going on towards the last game of this round in terms of round 3, it is Reds versus the Chiefs. And normally, I would actually say this will be a very close game, but I am just going to start off straight off the back and just say I think the Chiefs will win this by some margin. I think because not just because they had a very impressive win against the Brumbies last week, but also if you look at the sides actually going into this, the Reds actually don't have their best team available because Jordan Mattia and Hunter Basami is out due to HIA protocols. So they're not available for this game. So their backline is a bit depleted in that sense. And again, they're going to have to rely on Jock Campbell on that 15 spot. I guess Henry at the 12. Like, I mean, McDermott. I think McDermott and Line have been pretty good in terms of a 9-10 combination. In terms of the they've actually been, now that I think about it, like if you're going to think of like an Australian 9-10 combination, they've definitely been up there. But I just think it's in the Chiefs' favor. I think you could obviously prove me wrong if you want to, but I just think this one is going to be heavily in the Chiefs' favor. So yeah, like what's your kind of take on this one?
Yeah, no, I think the Chiefs should have a comfortable. Well, that's the thing. I don't know about comfortable win though, because we've got to remember this red side took the Hurricanes to the limit, didn't they? And yes, that was with Jordan Patai, and yes, that was with Hunter Paisami, but there was still enough in that red side, I think, to say that they might be competitive with New Zealand teams. Whether or not they're competitive though with the Chiefs side that did dominate the Brumbies in last week's game though.
And Hurricanes had one less man. Like it's
true. It's a tricky one. I feel like maybe about a 15-point margin, maybe rather than a 40-point margin, could be on the cards for the Chiefs here. Okay, but or are you more? You're thinking 30 points?
I'm thinking like no, not like 30. I think that this will be like I think 20 to 20 to like 25 margin, you could say, in terms of like the difference. I just think it's one of those where the Chiefs just I look at their backline. It is just like stacked. They have Cortis Latimer, McKenzie, Nana Satiro, Bohipi, Rona, Stevenson, Josh Ione. Like honestly, like that could honestly be, if you wanted to, an all black backline.
Yeah,
you could actually
little reshuffle there, of course. No Anton Leonard-Brown in the starting side.
Yeah, I guess, but I would still have Bohipi and Rona. I think both of them are like Chiefs. Honestly, I mean, I think we've said this. I'm not sure if I've said this in the past, maybe on my videos, but I think they definitely have the best centers in terms of like the depth in that center. Like they have Rona, Bohipi, who I think are both brilliant. They have Quintu Paya, who I just think is like another level and definitely, in my opinion, should make the All Blacks this year. Again, formats obviously come into it, but I'm hoping he can do the job. And then you have someone like Anton Brown, who is so consistent and it's just someone who you can always rely on. So yeah, I just think they're so good in that area. But again, it's going to come down towards that back line. And I think Sean Stevenson, even though, yes, the Chiefs obviously were very impressive last week, I think Stevenson actually had a bit of an off game. You could obviously, because I think he had times like where he dropped the ball twice, like where he had an opportunity where he had the ball and he dropped it, and then he did the same thing in the opposite half. And I was like, so he's definitely going to be wanting to get a try on this game, I think, and he'll be. I would not be surprised if it's even like a double or even a hat trick, maybe. We'll see what happens, but I think from my once watch player, I'm looking at Sean Stevenson because I think he's going to have a killer of a game for this one.
In transitioning to right wing for this game rather than fullback as well.
Exactly.
For Sean Stevenson. So I'm going to go with a Reds player just to be a little bit different.
Okay.
Go with the other side of the fence. And I'm going to say Isaac Henry at number 12 because I feel like he's one of those players that we saw moments of last year and everyone kind of went, who is this guy? Like, where's he come from? Because he was just a bulldozer at times, running over opposition. He's got plenty of pace as well. So I feel like in terms of, yes, they would love to have Hunter Paisami, but I just feel like Isaac Henry, honestly, he's a bit more of an unknown, of course, but he's actually not that much of a downgrade, I don't believe, from Hunter Paisami. And if anything, I actually think Isaac Henry, controversially, has the better work rate than Hunter Paisami. So I'm curious to see how that works for the Reds moving forward if they do have Paisami up for a week or two and what Isaac Henry can do in that number 12 jersey. So, yeah, I'm going with Isaac Henry as the key player to watch out for. But we are both, of course, going with the Chiefs to win this game by a decent margin.
Yeah, by a decent margin indeed. But yeah, that is kind of it really here, guys. That is Super Rugby round 3 kind of covered in terms of our preview. Same with the Six Nations. Of course, let us know in the comments what you guys think for both of these kind of competitions, kind of who you think will win going into it. Do you guys believe England could beat Ireland? Do you believe Wales can get the job over France? Could the Scottish get the job over the Italians? I don't know. That could be a close one. But of course, let us know in the comments what you guys think in terms of Super Rugby as well. Like the video, guys. Subscribe to our channel. Definitely check out our respective channels. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time.